Welcome back to the U.S. Senate Democratic debate from von der Maiden Hall at the University of Connecticut. Our next question for the candidates is centered on defense. Lori will begin. Lori.
Ms. Whitnum, the defense industry is worried about $50 billion in cuts that the Pentagon plans for January. These cuts are automatic unless Congress either overrides them or reduces the deficit. What should the Senate do about these cuts?
Well, you know, our nuclear program, we've cut our nuclear weapons from 22,000 down to 5,000, and just maintaining what we have is about $50 billion in costs for maintaining nuclear weapons. The defense, the war in Iraq, the war for Israel, cost us $1.4 trillion. And Paul Krugman, who is the greatest economist we had, said that the reason why we have an economic downturn now is because of a housing bubble and a neoconservative war. We cannot engage in any more wars for other countries. We must end the wars we have now, and we must think a little bit more protectionist. And we must also tell Israel to back down. They can't get everything they want. We've been a very good friend to Israel, and they need to act in kind by solving the problems within their own borders, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because it makes all of us unsafe.
Lori has a follow-up question.
Ms. Whitnum, but you know, Israel's an American ally. Should we not seek to support them as they seek to deflect increasing pressure, not only from Israel, from Iran, but from Egypt?
Egypt was held up all those years. We give Egypt $1.3 billion and another $250 million for 30 years now. And what we have to do is Israel approves it, and then it goes to our Secretary of State, and then it gets sent to Egypt. That is why Egypt has never attacked Israel amid the endless slaughters and injustices Israel perpetrates on its underclass. I'm sick and tired of our country paying money. That's $26 million of Connecticut taxpayer money going to Egypt to make Israel happy. The NGOs there, finally, Egypt played Israel really well recently, and I loved it. They let the NGOs in, all the Israeli-sponsored NGOs, to topple Mubarak. And Mubarak was old. They toppled him, and then they said, get out. But now we have this guy here, this Saban character, Michael Nabil Saban, who is sponsored by an Israeli NGO as we speak, speaking to our State Department. Israel never stops furthering its goals. We need to be very clear with Israel. We've been a very good friend to them. They need to act in kind. Thank you.
Ms. Bysiewicz, back to defense. The Connecticut is very heavily dependent on the military. What should be done about these impending cuts?
Well, I have a plan to make our military stronger, smarter, and more mobile. And I would start by bringing our young people back from Afghanistan even sooner than the president's deadline, because that way we would be saving $10 billion for each month we are able to bring our troops back sooner. I think we should realign our United States military. We have hundreds of bases in Europe that have been in Germany since the Cold War. They were put there when we had a different model, a post-World War II model. What we need to do is realign our military so that it can respond better to global terrorist threats. That means increasing our naval and our air power, things that fit in very well with Connecticut's premier defense industry, and that's what I would do to strengthen our military and make our country safer.
Ms. Bysiewicz, Chris Keating has a follow-up for you.
Just a quick follow-up on that. How you didn't mention a time frame on Afghanistan. How fast should that be speeded up? How quickly should the troops be home from Afghanistan?
They should be home yesterday. I was opposed to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we have the best military power in the world. We can figure out a way to bring our young people back sooner than the president's deadline. And for every month that we bring our young people back sooner, we are saving 50 American lives. And we know that we've been there too long when we are losing more young people in the Middle East to deaths from suicide than to deaths in combat.
Mr. Murphy, what should the Senate do about the Pentagon cuts?
Well, there's absolutely no credible way to pare down the size of the American debt and deficit without reducing defense costs. We just have to be honest about that. And the end of the war in Afghanistan is a big part of that, but we're also going to have to make some tough choices about obsolete or inefficient defense programs. Here's how we save Connecticut's economy from those cuts. I've started an effort in Washington called the Buy America movement. The Buy America movement stands for a pretty simple premise, that when we send our taxpayer dollars to Washington to buy things for the federal government, and 70% of U.S. purchasing is in the Defense Department, we should buy them from American companies. I'll give you an example. A small company out in Ansonia and Waterbury, Connecticut makes tubing for the submarines. They could add dozens more workers here today if the Navy awarded the contract for submarine tubing to an American company rather than to a European company. That's dozens of jobs and ultimately millions of dollars into our economy. We're going to have to pare down the size of our defense budget. No way around that. But if we start spending those dollars here, we can protect Connecticut's economy.
Mr. Tong, what should be done about the impending Pentagon cuts?
My grandfather is sitting here today, 95 years young. He came here in the early 70s to work at Colts Manufacturing as a ballistics engineer. He worked on the M16 at the height of the Vietnam War. We're here, my family is here because of the defense industry, because of defense contracting here in Connecticut. It occupies an incredibly important role in our state's economy. I think Chris is right. We have to have an honest conversation about pulling down $700 billion a year in defense spending in this country. That doubled under the Bush administration, more than the rest of the industrialized world combined. It's not sustainable. I agree with the president's steps that he's taken with the Pentagon to reduce the number of troops on the ground, to articulate a new strategic vision for our military, which means superiority in the air and on the ground. To me, that means jet engines at Pratt, that means Black Hawks at Sikorsky, and that means subs at Electric Boat. Thank you.
Mr. Oak, same question.
I'm starting to think Mr. Tong and I are twins. He pretty much gave, you know, I was going to bring up my grandfather, who was, and other things. I was going to bring up my grandfather, who was in a concentration camp during World War II, and he would relate the horror stories of having to eat his own body lice and drink bleach water to survive, and say, you know, I understand the need for military and defense. But having said that, in 2001, the defense budget was $412 billion. In 2009, it's, you know, $699. That's a 70% increase, like Mr. Tong was talking about, during George Bush's years in office. We can get back and still be innovative and creative and bring the money back here to Connecticut, and we will, you know, we'll keep the jobs, and we can still have an innovative defense. We're the only superpower left in the world. We're the most powerful nation in the world. We don't need a $700 billion, you know, defense budget anymore. And if we brought everybody home, and the Secretary and I agreed on this last time, we got to bring them home tomorrow. I bring them home before one more person dies in Afghanistan, period.
All right, thank you. Our fifth and final topic is on the economy. Chris Keating will start us off.
Ms. Bysiewicz, how can the United States and Connecticut facilitate bringing back the manufacturing